welcome everyone to this conversation, this Work Unleashed conversation with Box and Warner Brothers. We're delighted to have Vicky Colf with us today and Steph Carrillo, the Chief Operating Officer at Box. Steph and Vicky will be having this conversation on the topic of Work Unleashed, which we've been having over the last few months. This is the season finale of the first season of Work Unleashed, so we're really glad to have Vicky here, CIO at Warner Brothers, to be talking about the things that she's been working on and will be working on in this topic. So just a few housekeeping notes as we get going. This will be a conversation between Steph and Vicky. There will be a chance for you to ask questions. Please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom webinar. You can submit your questions and we'll start to queue those up, and we will take questions towards the end. So please feel free to submit those at any point during the conversation. There is a chat feature. If you have any questions or need to reach out, I will be monitoring the chat and will be facilitating, helping make sure that there are no issues. And you can use that for asking me questions. If you want to ask Vicky and Steph questions, please use the Q&A feature. That just helps us manage the queue. It's a little bit more effective as a tool. With that, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Carrillo, the Chief Operating Officer at Box, who's going to be your host for this conversation. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ian. Hello, everyone. Super exciting to be here today. And hopefully we're going to have a little bit of fun for the next 45-50 minutes on, well, a Zoom fireside chat, as we'll call it. So as Ian mentioned, our guest today is Vicky Colf. She's the Chief Technology Officer of Warner Brothers, as well as the Global Head of Content and Enterprise Technology for Warner Media. Just to give you a little bit of background on the very large roles that Vicky plays today. Vicky leads a group of more than 2,000 team members located across 20 countries. The group provides technical foundation for Warner Brothers and Warner Media's business and storytelling. Vicky oversees Warner Media-wide centers of expertise, and these are in the enterprise technology, B2B monetization systems, and media supply chain and content operations. And we're going to ask Vicky to share a little bit about what she does specifically, so we'll get some more information shortly. The teams are responsible for delivering Warner Media content worldwide in more than 40 languages. As Warner Brothers CTO, Vicky also oversees the studio's technology services and solutions, including brand and franchise platforms, data intelligence, compliance readiness, games, publishing technologies, content standards, and storytelling to develop new formats and engagements for consumers and fans all over the world. Sounds like quite a fun job. Welcome, Vicky.
Thank you, Stephanie. I feel like you've done all the work for me and I can just, that was amazing.
It's a mouthful. It's really pretty incredible. And I think for the audience, it would be great. I did cover a lot. It would be great to get an understanding of sort of describing your role today and how it's evolved during your time at Warner Brothers.
Yeah. Well, I think all of that you shared is, when I hear that, it's just a reminder for me. I have the amazing, amazing team of people that I get to work with every day, and they really are the team that makes all that happen. But I like to think about our team as I feel really, really lucky because I truly think that we get to work at the intersection of storytelling, creativity, and technology. And that's what we love about our work. We get to support Warner Media content from pre-production or cradle. And I don't like to say grave because we support preservation and archive for all of Warner Media. So we want to make sure that these stories are available to fans in perpetuity long after I'm gone. And that's a responsibility that we take really seriously, but we're also really excited about. And then another piece of what my team does, which I know we'll touch on a little bit later, is we support more than 30,000 employees globally to make sure that they have the technology and tools that they need to get their job done every day. And we support a really diverse workforce. So that can mean very different things to different members of our team. And then finally, another space that we're really excited about is partnering with our creatives to understand how they can leverage emerging tech to tell sort of current forms of stories and then future emerging forms of storytelling. So that's another really exciting and fun part of what we get to do.
That's fantastic. So you're helping them sort of stay ahead of the curve and thinking about how to leverage innovation in the way they think about telling stories.
Yeah, and it's a very two-directional, bi-directional process. I think we get to work with the best creatives in the world, and they have so many ideas. And sometimes it's about us figuring out, can we find the right solution to empower, enable them, and bring their vision to life? And then sometimes we're bringing something new to the table to say, like, hey, have you seen this? Could this help you tell a story in the way that you envision, or maybe in a new and different way? So it's a very collaborative process.
That's fantastic. And so maybe it'd be fun to understand a little bit about your career path and what actually brought you to Warner Brothers.
It was kind of a twisty career path. I want to give a shout out to Harvey Mudd College. I went to school there. It's a great school, especially from a diversity perspective. I have to give props for that. But went to school there, engineering degree, really wanted to design cars. So maybe someday I'll get to go back and do that. But it wasn't a great time in the auto industry when I graduated. So I ended up in consulting, and through consulting, I really got exposure to a huge diversity of industries, from semiconductor companies, truck companies, some food companies, packaged goods companies, and then eventually entertainment. And that's really how I got introduced to the music and movie and TV businesses. And I really kind of fell in love with entertainment. And in particular, I fell in love with Warner Brothers, who was my client at one point in time. And then it was the usual, steal the consultant from from the consulting firm situation. But that was sort of my twisty path to where I am today.
And so you had already sort of some insights on what it would be like, having had exposure working with them.
And I knew I loved the people. I loved really being part of I'm a very behind the camera person. So, but I love seeing the magic of how it all gets made and how the magic happens. That was the really cool part to me. Never wanted to be on the other side of the business.
The camera, that's fascinating. Yeah. That's awesome. And so it would be fun maybe to share with the viewers to learn something about how Warner Brothers and Warner Media embrace technology and innovation.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that is surprising to, if you're talking to your family member or something, is the fact that we really think of ourselves as much as a technology company as an entertainment company. And that has just increased over time as technology has become more and more a part of storytelling. But, if you go way back in the Wayback Machine, we're proud that WB was the first to release a talking picture in 1927. We were the principal inventors of DVD. We hold hundreds of enforceable patents. So we really feel like innovation is part of our DNA. And we're, from a tech org perspective, we think that technology is becoming more and more integral to the creative and storytelling process, as I mentioned at the beginning. And as you think about 5G, mobile edge compute, VR, AR, how game engines are coming into the production process, that for us is incredibly exciting because it just means we get to be even closer to the whole process. So I think, how as a company we look at technology, it's just become an even closer, tighter partnership.
That's fantastic. Can I ask, are you constantly looking at your ecosystem and your technology stack and forcing yourself to say, is this still the right technology? Is it driving the innovation and the creativity that we're looking for? Is that sort of a part of a regular cadence that you have?
Yeah, look, I think we could always be better at that. And there's parts of the business where that muscle is probably incredibly well developed, and other parts of the business where, for any number of reasons, we have a little more work to do there. But it's certainly something that we strive to do broadly. But, if you think about our company, we're in 90 countries all over the world. I mean, the scale and diversity of our company, I think, also sometimes surprises people. Yeah. We run studio tours in Leavesden and Burbank, and sometimes people are surprised to hear that, or even hearing about our games business. So I think the breadth and depth and complexity of our business sometimes surprises people as well.
Absolutely. I have to admit, I did a little bit of reading over the weekend and I didn't realize how big the games business was,
Yeah.
candidly. So
Yeah.
you're right, it is very diverse.
Yeah.
You talk about collaboration, and clearly it's an integral part of everything that you do in the organization. And so I'd love to understand, how is Warner Brothers using tools like Box and like others in order to ensure you're delivering the best possible experience for your customers and viewers?
Yeah. Well, look, I think many of your other guests we've all talked about the fact that this pandemic has been sort of jet fuel for processes that we were already in the midst of. And so we've been shifting to cloud-based collaboration tools like Box, like Microsoft 365 for quite a while. I think this just, accelerated it to a degree that we never could have imagined. And I think we're now at a place, and I was realizing this the other day, now when somebody sends me an email and they actually attach the file versus just sharing, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? And so it's just become part of the way that we work. And we use collaboration tools like Box for the usual suspects, standard document sharing, collaborating on a PowerPoint, et cetera, et cetera. But, some of the interesting use cases that we found that where it's been really helpful is like in our production technology group, they're using the Box file request feature to help collect all the documents and paperwork that we need from crew before, during, and after a production. And the people who work on productions can change from production to production. So the ability to have that dynamic web form where submitters can sort of securely upload their information and the production team can track it in a really easy way and get it the heck out of email has been a lifesaver for people. And that's just one example. There's a million different examples but it's really become part of the way we work.
That's fantastic. And it's a great segue for us as we go and look at sort of a recent case study, DC Comics. And so I'm excited to kind of share this story with the audience out there. So I understand that one of the Warner Media brands, DC Entertainment, was starting to use Box in some of their really complex and highly specialized workflows. So it'd be great to understand maybe some unique use cases and how they started collaborating. Some of the lessons that they learned as a result.
Yeah, there were definitely lessons. DC, for those of folks that aren't comic book fans, shame on you, but DC is one of the most prolific comic brands in the world, and they publish thousands of comics and graphic novels every year. So a lot of content coming out of DC, and huge credit to the DC leadership team. They started this digital transformation initiative long before we went into this crisis. And they were really forward thinking in terms of their creative and production life cycle. And they knew that they needed to start to work differently. And again, get out of email and even big, huge binders being passed around. So if you think about the fact that they work with freelance artists all over the world to create these really beautiful stories and pieces of art with huge, huge file sizes and just a vast number of components that need to come together in their production process, having a really solid, intuitive, easy to customize collaboration process was really critical for them. And I'm not kidding when I say, they were able to move away from passing around big, huge binders of stuff.
Wow.
And lots of emails to support this process. So one of the really, really smart things that the DC team did was they took a really incremental process. I think we've all seen these Uber workflow projects fail because you do this big, huge, beautiful process flow and you say, okay, I'm going to build that. And then when you get into it, you realize, well, people are really horrible reporters of what their real work processes are. So you get into it and then you realize, wow, this is just not working at all. So the DC team was really smart. They took an incremental step. They started really simple, set up asset repositories and folder structures that would feel really familiar to the artists and the editors.
Yep.
And then as people got comfortable with that, we added automation via tasks. And we now, fast forward, are at a point where their entire life cycle of their core publishing slate is managed in Box. And so I think it might be fun here to just pull up some of the artwork so you can see. And this artist that did this piece is Kevin McGuire, and I'm always in sheer awe of people who have this kind of talent, because I can't draw a stick person. But if you see this, you can kind of, this is a small subset of the workflow that they go through, but you can see, it goes from inks, you can see the lettering process. Somebody has to check that all of those, that the lettering is accurate and correct, that there aren't any typos. And then from a creative perspective, of course, people who are far more talented than me are checking to make sure that this is what they intended on the final page. But it goes through many steps with many experts involved in just checking to make sure it looks good before you go through the process of finalizing it.
That's fantastic.
So
wow.
Yeah, I think that it's just beautiful, beautiful artwork. So yeah, I think I touched on the lessons learned and about what they eliminated: the binders, the emails, the confusion about where things are in the workflow. And I think Box in this case was a really great tool because it was configurable, really easy to adapt out of the box, which worked for the team. The UI was intuitive for the team, so they felt it easy to get used to. The support for the native files that they're accustomed to working with, the file formats, they're really liking the chat. And then I mentioned the fact that we're using tasks and automation. And then just the transparency. You can see what's happening in the process throughout. And then security, which we always worry about security.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit on a couple of things that I think in the current environment that we live and work in are really important. And as I think about the fact that you eliminated binders, as we sort of think about the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and the ability for people to successfully work together, that in itself would have been incredibly difficult if you were still working in sort of the more traditional way. So as we think about sort of this working from home, working from anywhere transition, what has the impact of COVID-19 been on Warner Brothers, just from an operational perspective and a day-to-day perspective as well?
Yeah, well, that what you raised about the DC workflow, I think one of the things that now we can look back with 2020 hindsight, the safety of our storytellers, the people on our crews, our employees, our freelancers, our fans, like I know for every company, that's the number one thing. It's safety, safety, safety first. And the great thing about that workflow is people can keep working and be safe at home. And I think that's a real gift of it. And I wouldn't say that we're unique in terms of the level of impact. I think you can see, and if you follow our trades at least, our production was shut down and we're now working on ways to bring back production. And then I mentioned our studio tours, which we've had to close. And we've opted to keep closed for the time being, but those are all huge impacts. But with that said, outside of those things that require us to be on site, I'm really proud of the work that our team did to make sure that, a majority of our employees in those 90 offices were able to almost overnight flip to work at home. It's 30,000 people figuring out how they can work from home, and it involves things like mass provisioning more RSA and VPN accounts over a weekend to make sure work from home work. And we have people in APAC who, of course, they went to work from home long before we did here in the States. Right. So I think from an impact perspective, we just so quickly shifted to this remote working. We saw almost a 2,000% increase in online meetings. We use things like Teams and WebEx a lot, but it was pretty staggering, the immediate shift that we made to this work from home. I'm so impressed with how seamless it was. But I think we're in a good place in terms of making sure, outside of those couple examples, that people are empowered to do what they need to do from home.
That's great. And so for your team specifically, they were sort of right on it. You had already an incredible infrastructure that allowed you to sort of ensure that it was relatively seamless. I'm sure for the first week, just like the rest of us, that your team felt it more than anyone else, as you were just making sure the systems were up and working, everyone had access, etc. And then for the end users, reassuring them that they had the support that they needed. When in an office, they could have come around to see your team at some point, giving them the confidence that, hey, just because we're not physically in the same building, everything's going to be okay. Was there that level of reassurance that you had to sort of continually communicate with all the employees to let them know this is going to be fine?
Yeah, it was, I think communication was key. And I'm sure you guys felt this too. It was truly a moment where our BCP and DR teams, they shined, rock stars. They really helped us navigate this in terms of like, how do we ensure business continuity? And then the communication, telling people what's going on, what to expect. We all are getting the same question. Are we coming back? When are we coming back? Google just said July. What are we doing? So continually trying to give people as much information as possible so they can try and plan their lives around this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a familiar story as we speak with many clients around the world. And I think under the circumstances, we've all managed as well as we can. And the infrastructure and the technology becomes an important lifeline. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. So as you think about Work Unleashed, which is sort of the name of the series, which is really about enabling everyone to do their best work, is how I think about it. It's whenever, and particularly right now, like anytime, anywhere. If you think about Warner Brothers, how does it differ from what we might have thought just a few months ago? So if you think about, I know it sounds crazy, it feels like a lifetime going back to, let's say, as you entered the calendar year and all the things that you had planned for, did you have to pivot? Are there things that you've done differently to ensure that people can continue to do their very best work?
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you described Work Unleashed. I touched on this earlier. I think one of the great things that, we always try and remember is we have so many different types of work happening across the studio. And I love telling people, we've got people who are responsible for building sets, actually physically building houses that look very real, or, building a piece of furniture, people managing live events, our studio tours, team members. And then we even have our own fire station on the lot in Burbank, which is always a fun fact. So, when I think about everyone from those people on our team to, me and my team members, what being able to work effectively looks like is so different. There's so many different versions of working effectively. And I think the common component, as you said, is figuring out what are the right tools and technology for the specific work that they might do. So like for one person, that might mean I just need a good laptop, a keyboard, and a reasonable size display. Mm-hmm. And then for, an editor who's working remotely, he or she may just need access to incredibly powerful compute resources with really low latency.
Got it.
And so there's no one size fits all. And I think it's about creativity and agility and just listening to people.
And that's a great point. I've kept hearing this wonderful theme and focus that you have around people, and you mentioned earlier safety, all within the context of people, which I love. And so as you think about your people, how are you leading with empathy? And as team members are working remotely, and you mentioned earlier, trying to figure out how to balance work-life in the current environment. What are some of the things that you've been doing to try and ensure that everyone can continue to sort of take every day forward and make the best of the situation?
Yeah, of an evolving situation.
Exactly.
Look, I think the unique thing about COVID is literally all over the world, we're all going through it, and it's a little bit different based on the country you're in and mm-hmm. how that situation is going. I have to give big kudos to Ann Sarnoff and Jason Kylar, WB and Warner Media CEOs respectively. They have from the very start been very vocal and clear about the fact that the company is here to support the team members, and you have to take care of yourselves and you have to take care of your loved ones. That's number one priority. They've been supportive of non-traditional schedules, flex time. And with summer coming now, we're talking a lot about please take some time off. I know the tendency is not to, because you can't go anywhere.
Anyway,
yeah. But we're really just, you got to take some time off. I think we're all seeing the burnout in our teams, like that we're hitting that breaking point. At least I feel like, everyone on my team is, and we're just stressing that you got to disconnect. We're trying to create space for people to disconnect. Within the tech org, we're doing no meeting Fridays to give people some space to take a break. And then I also think as leadership, and Stephanie, I'm sure you're feeling this, I feel like we also have to lead by example. I think the problem is if I keep saying, take some time off, disconnect, but then I don't do it, the message is, well, you can do it, but if you want to be in a leadership role or you want to be successful, you can't do it. And so I think it's really, really important that as leadership, we walk the walk in all things. But in addition, in terms of like, take a break, we're all better at our jobs when we have that break. It's scientifically proven fact.
Absolutely.
And then I think the empathy part is so critical now for parents. And we're having a lot of conversations about this with people more and more hearing that schools are not coming back in session. And then on my team, we're holding focus groups with parents because this is a really tough challenge. And we want to hear ideas and how can we support you as a parent? What would make this sustainable for you if you've got at least a fall portion of the school year and maybe all of the school year that you'll be dealing with kids at home. And so we're trying to, I've kind of called it like a mini hackathon. Like, how do we hackathon helping out parents? And then, it could be that there's a really interesting technology component to it as well. And then lastly, I sort of tell that everybody, like, you got to have a sense of humor about this stuff. I know we were joking before we started, when your cat jumps on the keyboard, your dog runs behind you, or the kids are screaming in the background. It's like, it's funny. Don't stress about it. We're all in the same boat here.
Exactly. All the neighbors, chainsawing the tree next door this morning. Exactly. You just have to go with it. It's interesting. You don't sweat the small stuff. And it's a great lead into my next question, which is for you personally, what have you learned in the last few months that makes things very different for you today?
I know there's so many answers to this question. And, I had a knee-jerk moment where I was like, oh, well, I can talk about all the technology things we've learned. But then when I, actually took a moment, I realized I feel like the most important thing that hopefully we're all learning is what the experience, not just at work, but just in your life in general, has been for our Black employees and teammates and friends. And it feels like that has been the most important learning moment for us as people. I think it's a lifelong learning journey that we're on. But it was tough for me to think of anything more important than that we've hopefully learned. So I know that's a bit off topic.
No, not at all.
But it felt, that's just the most important thing we're all learning right now.
Yeah, agree. It definitely has been a catalyst for a lot of things. There's no doubt. And a great reminder of what's most important. I agree with you entirely. You talk about the people a lot, and we've been trying lots of different things as well to stay connected. I was saying to someone yesterday who was saying, they miss, bumping into someone in the kitchen and asking them how their day is going, or what they, how their children are, or what's happening at school. And this creation of virtual communities. And we were running, just a fun side story, one of our global teams is running a virtual summer camp right now, which has been a really fun concept to sort of share in all the things that they've felt they've done well in the first half, some learnings, have a little bit of fun, little development as well, some meditation in there. Some people have never done it before. So it's sort of a fun summer camp.
I love that. That's such a great idea.
And I was really impressed. People came with, a backdrop of a lake with their fishing gear on and their fishing rod, and really fun things just to try and stay connected as people. And so, what are some of the things that you're doing to stay connected, create these virtual communities when we can't get together in person anymore?
I love that. And it makes me think, I wish there was a forum for us to share what we're doing and what's working and like our ideas for parents as well. I think that would be amazing to create a forum for that. But look, I think the things that we've been trying, because you're missing that like elevator time, the hallway run in, the run in at your favorite lunch place. I'm trying to replicate that a little bit by randomly just reaching out to people and, without a meeting, and just via chat, like, hey, how are you? What's happening? Because we've lost that like impromptu check-in that's outside of a meeting. So I'm trying to replicate that in our virtual world. I think everybody's doing virtual happy hours and coffee, and those are fun and those are helping. So I think those are great. And then, we use Yammer a lot. I think we're trying to open up the sharing of like fun stuff, like your vacation pics. What does your home office setup look like? What shows are you binging? So trying to create those virtual water cooler moments, if you will, through some of the technology channels we have. And then, we did talk about the fact that while it's really difficult and we are all going to screw it up multiple times, but being able to have some of these difficult conversations about race and what's happening in the world, it's an opportunity for us to share with each other, to learn from each other, and then also just show patience and empathy with each other as well. So those are some of the things, but would love to swap ideas with people.
Yeah, I agree with you. A forum with other ideas would be fantastic. We've been doing similar things, and we've been running, for example, these allyship circles. And it's been incredible to see how many of our employees have been joining them on a very regular basis, because everyone wants to learn, wants to understand. So I think there are some tremendous ideas, and that's something we took from another company as well. So I made a note. There's something in that in terms of creating a forum for ideas.
Are people bringing their kids to your summer camp?
They did yesterday, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is kind of fun. And everyone got sent a s'mores kit as well, which is kind of fun. So it was a great idea. I take no credit for it, other leaders, but I did walk away from it and immediately shared it with the team saying, I think this is a fun idea for everyone, just to lighten things up a little bit, because it just doesn't feel like a regular summer. So we thought we'd try and bring some of the magic back.
Love it.
So, okay, now the future. So as we look forward, what's on your agenda? And when I think of future, it's very short term nowadays. It's like the future is sort of a month out, 3 months out. So what are you thinking about for the next 90 days and as you continue to sort of evolve?
Well, I think we're, knock on wood, kind of moving past the table stakes part of just making sure, okay, can you do the basics and the fundamentals of your job? And I think for the most part, we've been able to do that. I think now we're moving beyond that and figuring out how is this moment in time an opportunity for us to not just adapt, but maybe innovate around the way that we work, and how is this going to shape and build our culture, and how can we make sure that's a positive thing? So like everything from how do you onboard a new employee in this environment? How do you make them feel like they're part of a team when they've never met people in person? How do you facilitate highly interactive brainstorming processes, which I know it's critical for both of our companies. Yep. And then we were talking about before we started CES going virtual, how do you have like a virtual event, because it's part of, running our businesses, and how do you make that meaningful, impactful in this virtual world? So I think we're moving beyond table stakes to, the advanced version of this course that we're all in. So that's kind of what is on my mind for the next 90 days in terms of people and team. And, it goes without saying, there's all the technology stuff too. How do we keep all of our critical processes on track as well? That's just sort of assumed.
Yeah, exactly. You're keeping the business going, quite candidly. If there was ever a time when technology was sort of at the top of the ring, it is right now. I mean, we just couldn't survive without it, quite candidly. And anyone that had at any point in time taken it for granted no longer does, I suspect. It's become so important. Do you think that COVID's going to accelerate change at Warner Brothers or for the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as we've heard before, sometimes the biggest problems or challenges can create the best environment for innovation. And I think it's just sort of driven a a stronger willingness to look at some of our strategies and maybe accelerate them. I talked about innovation and storytelling. Can you create interesting experiences for people while maintaining all of the social distancing we have, or while you're at home? So yeah, I think the quick answer is 1000%. I think there are places where it will accelerate change, and then not just change, but introduce fundamentally what new ways of doing things, maybe that we didn't think about before. And, you know, I think we all recognize as well that the change has already happened in terms of flexibility and how people work and where they work. I think that's done.
Are there things, Vicky, that you've stopped doing? Like that this just highlighted, you know, why were we ever doing that? It just wouldn't anymore. Has that happened as well?
I think there's a lot of discussion about some of those things. So we have a number of international colleagues who you could probably say they spent 80% of their lives on the road, just traveling.
Yeah.
And I've heard some of them say, and I don't think anybody's drawing any final conclusions yet, you know, while this feels like we've been doing this for 100 million years, it's still early days, but
it is.
I've heard people say, like, look, I'm not sure that's actually required anymore. I think we've proven that, especially where you've got an established relationship, you can do a pretty decent job of doing certain types of collaboration and relationship maintenance without having to travel all over the world so much. So that's one example that comes to mind. And then we have gone paperless on so many things, like passing around contracts to sign. It has helped us just like stop the madness on some of the paper flying around.
Absolutely. And that's a good lead into my next question, which is, as you think about some of the changes that have happened, the importance of security and collaboration, which you've highlighted multiple times already during the conversation, and then integration as well, because your tech stack and the ecosystem is so vast as you're continually looking at the right technology for your company. How do you view the, I mean, you sort of said it earlier, how important it is, but obviously even more so in a work from anywhere environment, as you protect the crown jewels from a security perspective, but just so you can continue to thrive as an organization in this new world.
Yeah, I mean, it's the double-edged sword of having amazing collaboration tools. You can make it so easy, but it's also easy for you to accidentally click the wrong thing and share all. I mean, you know, it's the, like I said, a double-edged sword. And so I think, you know, when I talked about the diversity of the type of work we do, our fire department versus somebody who's working on the next big release or comic, the security issue is not one size fits all. I am incredibly blessed to actually get to work with one of the best security teams in the world, and we get to leverage AT&T's capabilities here. But we really, you know, think about what's the appropriate level of security for what we're doing as we continue to make collaboration more seamless. And, you know, I will say with Box here, we've had some great conversations about how do you create the security capabilities that can flex with those different requirements. And we are talking a lot about Box Shield. How can we leverage that? How can we help people classify and flag when content needs to be protected? How do we behind the scenes proactively monitor threats? And then just helping to facilitate the incident response process. So you know, we're excited about the potential of Box Shield, and it's an ongoing conversation around how do we, because you just can't bring a big hammer for every security problem.
Absolutely.
And so that's a lot what we're focused on in terms of security.
And I'll give a little plug. We just had our announcement this week of auto classifications for Shield, which, to your point, I can immediately see a need for it just based on the work that you're doing. It makes a lot of sense, and in this work from anywhere environment, which quite frankly, regardless of the pandemic, is something we were going to get to at some point anyway. I mean, with the changing world, I would have thought the ability to be successful and to thrive as a business, particularly where talent is so scarce in certain markets. You feel it in Southern California. We feel it absolutely here in the Silicon Valley. The ability to have access to incredible creatives, for example, anywhere in the world, for your organization. The technology enables you to do that now, which is fabulous. So I think it opens opportunities, I think, for all of us. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I love that, because one of the things, as we talked about 60, 90 days that we've been thinking about is, I'm deeply passionate about the D&I work that we do, but now that we've become more flexible, does this create more opportunity for us to create a more inclusive workspace or work environment?
Yeah.
And can we do a better job of inviting people to the dance now that you can attend virtually?
Yep.
And you can be wherever you want. And that's been a really exciting, interesting conversation that I think, I hesitate to call it a silver lining, because this is such a horrible sort of crisis that we're in. But I guess, I don't know, making lemonade out of lemons, maybe.
Yeah. And honestly, I think we were talking about this earlier. I think you have to look for the positives as well. It's been an incredibly challenging time for so many, and we recognize that. But you have to hope that some good comes from it in all aspects of our lives. And so I agree with you. I think it'll manifest itself in lots of different ways, but hopefully, there'll be some positive things that come out of it, which is great. So I have two final questions for you.
Okay.
The first one, before we go to Q&A, because I think there are a few questions out there, so we'll throw back to Ian in a moment. So I'd love you to share your guiding principles.
Okay, well, I'll go quick so we don't run out of time. I think my really simple way of, make it better, and the fancy way is stewardship. Make sure that you leave this place better than you found it. I think that's all of our responsibility. I try, even in my most tired and worn out state, I keep trying to push myself, like, keep learning and be curious. Like, if you lose that curiosity, especially in tech, I think you're dead in the water. Always try and be kind, or as my team and I frame this, I'll keep it clean for the morning, but don't be a jerk. The brilliant jerk is not someone any of us wants on our team. And then the one that I struggle with the most, and I took this from Brene Brown's stuff, is try to assume people are always doing their best.
Yeah.
And I do fail at this, but it's something that I try and make myself do, but I am far from perfect at it.
That's a great one. I love that one as well. She's so right. A good reminder for all of us. And then thank you for sharing those. Finally, we've got a really incredible diverse audience out there. So I would love for you to share, just based on everything you've gone through pre-COVID and then the last 5 months, any advice that you would give right now.
I always feel weird presuming telling people what to think about, but I think we've touched on a lot about it. I think we have this unique opportunity and responsibility to make sure that the technology products and services that we all facilitate and enable are helping people do their best work under these difficult circumstances. And my boss refers to, when it comes to workplace tech, our employees as our consumers. And I love that point of view, because for my team and for me, I think it reinforces, like, put yourself in the person's shoe, like, whether it's your EA or, like I said, somebody on production, like, what are they trying to do and how can we try and make that easier? Because I think that's our job as technologists, whoever your consumers are. And then, I think we're starting to think about, okay, which of these trends that we're seeing are going to stick, and how can we proactively sort of capitalize on that, but also make sure we're creating the best experiences for our teams and our consumers based on that. And then we touched on the fact that use this as an opportunity to create an inclusive and diverse workplace. So those are some of the things that I guess I'm thinking about.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. We're going to pause there, and I'm going to check with Ian.
Yep.
I think we've had some questions. Ian, can we throw back to you for some
Absolutely.
Q&A?
So
Awesome.
let me jump in here. We've got a question from Art asking about if production has resumed. And I know you're not involved in physical production, but the question is how will production change when it does resume, or if it has resumed? And maybe you could comment on emerging production technology and the kind of the future as you see it from a technology perspective.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to say, the part that I can speak to is from a production, post-production perspective. Throughout this entire time frame, there's been work happening. So I know and I focus a bit on this, like brand new production spinning up, definitely was put on hold. But in terms of like, there was a lot of content at various stages of completion, and the technology team in partnership with our post team did a huge amount of creative work to figure out how can people work from home to finish this content. And so there's been a lot of ongoing work. In terms of brand new production spinning up, I don't want to give specific timeframes or anything, but I think as you can see in the trade, there's a huge amount of work happening to figure out how to do that, how to make sure people are safe. And technology has been an integral part of that, because in an effort to minimize sort of human density on site, we are doing a lot to enable the roles that can be remote to be remote. So I won't get into specific dates or timeframes, but it's actively being worked on right now.
That's great.
Great. And then we have a question here asking about your technology budget and how it may have shifted as a result of COVID. Any macro or micro areas that surprised you, security, training, etc.?
I don't think surprising, but we had to make sure that we were giving people the tools to work from home that I mentioned. Never before were you thinking about like how many keyboards and monitors you needed to make sure people had at home, right? So not surprising, pretty intuitive, but when I left the office, I can tell you, I was not mentally prepared for the fact that I wouldn't be back there this year. So I think that's one area. I think just an increased investment in collaboration tools and making sure that we've got sort of the right licenses and everything to support the scale of our workforce. But again, that's not surprising. I can't think of anything shocking that has come up at this point.
Great, thanks. And then a question here about, you mentioned Shield and some other things, but the question here is about features you're looking forward to see improve in Vox. So maybe whether it's a specific feature or just an area of collaboration.
Oh, you get an opportunity to ask.
I know.
That's
well,
okay.
Aaron, I'll address it. Now, look, we've talked about with Box Shield, like if you've got a massive tenant of users, there can be a lot of people who, you are really not using the Shield features at all. Like you're just not so much worried about low risk. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum. And so in order to avoid having to carve out all these different tenants for different, having a little bit more user or group level granularity in terms of how you deploy those capabilities. And I know there's a big product debate there, but that's what I've said. Like, look, when you've got this diverse of a workforce, like I would like some levers to pull so I'm not wasting money on people who don't need the features.
Yep, I've made a note of that. I will.
Yeah. They've heard it before. They're like, yeah.
Well, there's no harm in reinforcing it. So I am very happy to take that back to the product leadership team.
And then I think we have one more question here that we have time to address. Why does Warner Media choose Box over other tools such as OneDrive, Google Drive, and Dropbox? I know you've touched on this a bit, but maybe you could just elaborate a bit.
Well, I want to stress that we use Box and we use Microsoft 365. But with that said, it's not feasible or efficient for us to say, use whatever you want, pick whatever tool you want. For like security is a great reason why. So we have, sort of said that for different sort of capabilities that we need, we'll either have one or maybe 3 tools, but not too much more than that. This is not a commentary on other tools, but I will say with Box, we've really enjoyed the ongoing dialogue and the receptiveness and the openness and to our feedback and adapting to it and taking it into account. And then if you can't, we understand why. And we do feel like we have a lot of visibility to the roadmap. So I guess the short way of saying it is we have enjoyed the partnership with Box, and that's what we look for in all of the collaboration tools that we use: a dialogue, a partnership, and a willingness to go on the journey together.
Fantastic. Was that the last question, Ian?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Vicky, it has been such a pleasure. I could take up all morning with you, but I'm sure you've got more important things to be doing. It really was. You provided some terrific insights. It's always, I find it so much fun to learn about a business and particularly during these times to understand how you're putting people at the center of everything, and that technology is there to enable them to not just work successfully, but manage their lives. I mean, giving them that flexibility to thrive in these unusual circumstances, and just hearing some of the things that you're doing. Great messages, lots of little nuggets that I've taken away that we might try and incorporate in our organization as well, but I'm sure our guests did as well. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephanie. You were amazing. And as you said, I feel like we could chat forever, and we'll swap summer camp notes later.
Summer camp, I will be happy to do that. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And I'll throw back to Ian.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie and Vicky, for a great conversation. And thank you all for joining us. This was the final episode of Work Unleashed Season 1. We look forward to seeing you again in the fall for actually Seasons 2 and 3, because we have BoxWorks coming up in 49 days. Where the second season will be released all at once, so you can binge it in one day, and then we'll have Season 3 coming out after that in the fall. So we look forward to seeing you then. Please do join us at BoxWorks on September 17th. Thanks a lot. Take care.